I'm relying on the constitutional rights. I'm not just out here willfully nilly.
You are out here willy-nilly because if you
No,
were
that's
if you
not
were
true.
following, no.
But I'm not a person. I'm a human being. I have no contract with the Secretary of State. I'm traveling. I'm not driving.
I don't have to explain anything. It's not my job to explain it.
But you said
Listen,
you did explain, but you didn't.
but I said I allowed you to explain it.
That's kind of irrelevant.
Okay.
Today's story features a courtroom moment that took an unexpected turn. A self-identified sovereign citizen appeared before a very patient and kind judge. She genuinely tried to engage with him respectfully and give him a fair chance to speak. But unfortunately, things quickly went downhill when his tone became increasingly disrespectful. What stands out here is how these individuals often argue that the legal system doesn't apply to them, based on ideas they've seen online. Despite the fact that no court has ever ruled in favor of a sovereign citizen argument, some still believe these claims can overturn laws, especially traffic laws. But in this case,
the Supreme Court decided that a state cannot arbitrarily or erroneously convert a secure liberty, in this case, a secure right to travel, into a privilege, meaning we don't need license or insurance to travel throughout the land.
Okay, so this right to travel was about a welfare case, Mr. Williams, where she wanted to go to a different state, and they told her that because she didn't have established residency in that she was going to be denied services.
Right, and that violated her.
Right, because it's talking about services. She needed to take care of her child. She was 19 and she was pregnant.
But you avoiding the effects of the case. Even though that she filed a lawsuit against the state for denying her privileges, but the Supreme Court ruled that the Supreme Court ruled that can't happen because that'd be violating. That also be violating her right to travel throughout the states,
to receive the benefits that she needs in order to take care of herself and her child.
Yes, but you're missing the argument that the Supreme Court has stated. That'll be violating her First Amendment right, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, travel. I don't want you to miss that fact. That's what they ruled.
They said the closest the Supreme Court has come to overturning Shapiro Thomas was in 1995 with Anderson versus Green, California Welfare and Interstate Code annotated section instituted a 1-year residency requirement for welfare aid, violating Shapiro versus Thompson. Both lower courts in California affirmed that it violated Shapiro versus Thompson and granted the injunction. I'm sorry. Due to the procedural issue, California's residency requirement never went into effect, creating no justifiable controversy action and no actual issuance for the court to rule on. Whether they receive a waiver from the Secretary of Health or Human Services to set aside Shapiro versus Thompson, making the residency requirement pseudo-legal, the waiver was challenged again, and it's holding that the state court and the Secretary of HHS had not adequately considered public comment on the issues. This is about welfare. Yeah, this is about the welfare system and the ability for people. You cannot stop people from traveling. I don't see anything in here about a driver's license.
The decision of the court.
Right, she has the right to go places.
Look, the court reaffirmed the right to travel under the 14th Amendment Privilege and Immunities Clause in Suez versus Roe. So they conferred it to another case. But the conclusion of the case like that would be violating her right to travel. It have something to do with the welfare, but it's violating her right to travel.
It's all about that. Because the reason why we can't prohibit her from being able to travel or to go to another state is because then they're saying once she gets to that state, she has to establish some type of residency. And what they're saying is that if she doesn't have that residency, she wouldn't get the services needed. And so they're saying you can't say, oh, you can't go to this state and not get the stuff that you need to take care of yourself and your family just because you're not. I can't stop her. I can't say you can't move to this state and then we're going to block everything. I can't do that. Right. This is not about a license.
Which will violate the right to travel.
No.
That was the decision of the court. I'm not making that up.
It didn't work out for him. Let's take a closer look at how the judge responded and how this individual's legal reasoning ultimately didn't hold up. At one point, the man referenced a Supreme Court case, Shapiro versus Thompson, in support of his argument. However, his interpretation of the case was completely off. That ruling was about welfare benefits and the right to move between states, not about driving without a license. The judge, to her credit, calmly tried to explain the difference, but it was clear the argument wasn't grounded in actual law. It's a good reminder that simply quoting a legal case doesn't make it relevant or valid. You need to understand the context, and unfortunately, that was missing here. To be fair, compared to some other self-identified sovereign citizens, this individual wasn't aggressive. He tried to present his case using actual court decisions, which is more than many do.
You aren't, but you're not understanding what their decision was based on. Yes, you have the right to travel, but this is concerning services.
So if I chose to carry a weapon, I will be bearing arms.
If you chose to carry a weapon in the state of in Illinois, that's an automatic. You're not allowed to carry weapons at all in the state of Illinois unless you're a law enforcement officer. So if you traveled over the state lines and you went to Illinois and you tried to carry a gun, they would tell you no.
But that's irrelevant, Your Honor. We're talking about the state of Michigan. I have a right to bear arms, but you will call it receiving
exactly.
But the Constitution of Michigan states that I can bear arms, but
because once again, and we had this conversation already, the states can make stuff more, the localities can make stuff, they can, and it's a state law anyways, but they can be harsher than the U.S. Constitution, but they can do something that would take away from the U.S. Constitution. So they're not taking away your right to bear arms. They're just putting parameters around that right.
That's kind of irrelevant.
Okay.
And like Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, say no state can convert a secure liberty into a privilege. Our secure liberty, First Amendment, is the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. Right to travel throughout the United States of America. I'm relying on the constitutional rights. I'm not just out here willfully nilly, like United States versus Bishop.
But you are, because you're only taking the part that you want to be applied to you. So you are out here willy-nilly. Because if you were following, if you were following everything, you would want to follow everything and all the rules that were put into place. So all that
I'm following laws, not
following what you want to follow. And that's no. We talked about how that leads to anarchy. People can't do whatever they want to do. They say that I can follow only this. That's like me coming one day and saying, I want to practice law and I want to be a judge, and I haven't gone through any of the things to become a judge. That's not how it works.
I see how you
put it, but that's not. I can't sit up here with a fake P number. They wouldn't let me do that.
I see how you put it, but that's not true. What about Title 18 USC Section 241?
So Williams, do you want a trial on Monday or not? You can't argue this stuff to the jury.
Yeah, I want to go to trial, but I can't.
Okay. You can't argue this stuff to the jury. You can argue that maybe something, making sure that they didn't check the things. Like, you have to follow the law. I have to treat you as an attorney in that place on Monday. So I have to treat that you know how to practice and go about the way of law. And these different things, like, you can't just give the jury cases and stuff like that. That's not what it's going to be about. And you'll most likely end up with objections that I'll have to sustain, because it's going to be talking about the facts of these particular cases where the officers came today. Attorney Mason will make the argument for, and officers came to testify about.
What are they testifying about?
About these different stops.
Which is unlawful.
Different tickets. Okay. Well, I gave you plenty of time to write a motion about unlawful, and you did not want to.
That's so now we're here. I gave you affidavits stating the facts, what you needed, and
exactly. And the facts are to be argued before a jury. If they differ from these facts that on the tickets, we're here to talk about these tickets. I've already made my ruling long ago that they had the right to stop.
Still, the logic was flawed, and the court wasn't buying it. He now faces a jury trial, and it's likely he'll be held accountable for both the traffic violations and the time he's taken up in court. You can sense the judge's frustration, the prosecutor's readiness, and the growing impatience of everyone involved. Cases like this raise broader questions. Should courts start imposing stronger penalties on individuals who bring unsupported, Arguments that delay justice and waste public resources? Or is the current approach of letting them speak and then dismissing the arguments enough? Especially in states like Michigan, where courts are already busy.
And that these tickets are the tickets for which they wrote them for.
Yes, they have a right to stop persons, but I'm not a person. I'm a human being. I have no contract with the Secretary of State. I'm traveling. I'm not driving. I'm not driving for gain or profit. I'm going to point A to point B, not violating nobody's rights. I'm just traveling freely, like I exercise my constitutional rights. Like Title 18 USC, Section 241. Can you look that up?
I let you have a whole hour of time to discuss all of these previously, Mr. Williams. We talked about all of these, and at the end, I made the ruling that the court did have jurisdiction and that the officers could write tickets.
You haven't explained jurisdiction.
I don't have to explain anything. It's not my job to explain it.
But you said you did explain, but you didn't.
But I said I allowed you to explain it. Do you need to pull it up on YouTube?
But the burden is on the prosecutor.
Right, not on me. I'm the court. I just call laws and strikes.
And the prosecutor cannot state how she has jurisdiction.
Okay, Attorney Mason, do you want to state how you have jurisdiction over these matters?
Statute provides us with the jurisdiction over this matter. The statutes and the laws of the court provide the jurisdiction over these matters.
That's subject.
I am empowered by the state. I am empowered by my bar card, which has been submitted to the state of Michigan. I'm empowered by the city of Detroit.
But she's still not stating. I got to object to that because she's not stating how she has jurisdiction over.
She's telling you it's by the statutes. The statutes that were given.
Statutes is not law.
Okay.
I'm obeying by the law.
So you want us to call them laws? Laws are statutes. They're the same thing. It's just a fancy way of saying laws. Statutes are just a fancy way of saying laws.
Statutes are persuasive. Laws are mandatory.
These are laws. Okay, statutes are laws. That's just a fancy way of saying laws.
Yeah, they derive from the law.
At this point, Your Honor, I'm going to
rules and regulations.
I'm going to just make a motion that these matters have already been resolved. That the court has previously stated that the trial was set forth regarding the facts of the incidents that have arisen, and that the witnesses will testify only to the facts regarding the tickets.
What are the facts?
The facts are the things on the ticket. So you have to research the law and find out exactly what each one is to show.
According to Michigan Vehicle Code 257-744A, police officers knowingly.
Okay.
I travel with a passport. My ID been canceled since 2018, so none of that is true.
Just because you cancel your ID, and this is the last argument for today, and then we're just gonna have trial on Monday. Just because you cancel your ID doesn't mean now you have the right to drive in the state of Michigan. That's not the law of this state. When you avail yourselves of the roads, the lights, the streets, the anything. Once you take part on those items, then you automatically allow yourself to avail yourself to any laws that are being taken place, any statutes that are being taken place, any codes that are taking place. All of those now become active, whether you want them to or not.
Many believe these arguments unnecessarily burden the system and waste taxpayer money. It's not just an inconvenience. It's a growing concern that deserves attention. What do you think? Should there be stricter consequences for those who misuse the court system in this way? Or should we continue to rely on judges' discretion and patience? Thanks for watching and being part of the conversation. Feel free to share your thoughts below. We always value your insight.